If you enjoyed the stories you heard, please give it a like and leave a comment. To hear the newest cryptid tales, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you've had an encounter of your own you would like to share, or if you'd like to give feedback or make a suggestion, email me at cryptidtalesmel@gmail.com. The man who fed the Bigfoot. This man wishes to keep his name out of this, but told me I could share the story. We will call him Robert. I was always told of this crazy guy who fed Bigfoot every day. As a kid, I thought it was just a bunch of bull to scare us and make this guy seem creepier than he already was. But then I had my two experiences and began to give a little more thought to this whole thing. Maybe it was true. Maybe he had built a trusting relationship with these things. I seen Robert at a gas station a few years after I had my last encounter. I wanted to speak with him, but didn't know how to start that conversation. I watched him as he moved through the store and noticed him watching me as well. I go to leave, and right behind me is this man I had so many questions for. He said, "Hang on a minute," and put the 12-pack of beer in the bed of his truck. Then he asked me, "Which one did you see?" Trying to sound dumbfounded, I said, "Which one of what?" He said, "I already know. That's why you've been watching me. Which big guy did you see?" I told him two, a reddish-colored one and a mean-acting but never did anything one. He said a name unlike any I had ever heard and said he is the red-tinted one. "How do you know he is the one you feed?" He laughed and said, "Well, he's one of them. But I basically give them little treats. I could never satisfy their diet. Would you like to go talk somewhere? Maybe I can help you understand what you've seen." "I would love to talk to you," I said back. He said, "I take it you know where I live." "Yeah, I know. It takes me a little while to build up the courage to go. But I seem to can't help it. I feel I have to go. I show up and meet him at his front door. He invites me in and we begin to talk. I tell him about both of my encounters and ask why. Why did this happen to me? Why do I have to live with this and feel like people will think I'm crazy if I tell them? He said, "I don't know why. I can only tell you you're one of the lucky ones." Lucky? To feel completely insane? He said, "Let me show you something," as he reached for a book-looking thing on a table. He opened it and said, "Here's your Bigfoot," and hands me a Polaroid picture of this giant red-colored thing. I immediately knew it was him, the first one I had seen. "How?" He said, "He's not a beast. He's a gentle soul. There's no reason to be afraid of him anymore." I asked, "Do you know him?" He replied, "I did. He is no longer on this earth. He went to the Great Spirit." I said, like what the Native Americans believed. "No, their spirit is more like what you think of as God." I was dumbfounded at that point and didn't know what to ask. Then he said, "I don't know who the second one you seen was. Could have been a traveling one just moving through to find a place to call its own." He said, "Now, let me show you something else." He gets up and walks outside and starts saying things I have no clue what it is he's saying, or if it's even a language I've ever heard. He looks at me and said, "Okay, give it a few minutes." We wait and wait, and then I hear a twig snap. Robert said, "Okay." He shines a light into the woods, and 3 pair of eyes shining back at us. "Oh my God," I said. "They're coming in." "No, they will stay back till we go in. Then it's still hard to catch them." Something so big that can move with such stealthiness and stay hidden for so long, you can't outwit something like that. You can only pray for encounters like we have had. I said, "Then how did you know how to call them?" He responded, "The great red one taught me. He was my friend. These are the offspring of him, and we are still learning each other." I know this is crazy. Trust me, I know. But I wanted to tell you this, even if you never use it on your channel. I just wanted you to hear this and see these beings have a soul and are more than what most people give them credit for. This occurred right on the Pacific Crest Trail in Oregon, in the Three Sisters Wilderness area, at the foot of these 3 volcanoes. I am a retired mechanical engineer. At the time, I lived in Hood River, Oregon. The Northwest is the motherlode of these creatures. I have never had a psychological issue, nor have I ever needed any related help. I was an avid hunter and had hunted this area numerous times in the previous 10 years. My camp was approximately 6 hours on horseback after a vehicle could no longer drive. On this trip, my son, 2 teenage friends of his, and I decided to backpack in. We started at the crack of dawn and arrived at the camp around noon. This trip was just to explore for the upcoming hunting season, so my only firearm was a 44 mag revolver I would always carry into the woods. We cooked lunch and proceeded to scout the area. The day went without any unusual event. After it got dark, we went to sleep, probably around 10 p.m. All 4 of us in a light tent. I am a very light sleeper, perhaps as a result of my Vietnam history. At about 2 to 3 a.m., I was woken up by very, very heavy bipedal steps approaching the tent. There was a full moon. The person stopped, and I could see a very large shadow. I assumed it was just his proximity to the tent that was blocking the moonlight, but along with that, there was a very loud breathing which I could only associate with a large animal. By that time, I began to become alarmed. I was sure that it was not a bear because I heard the steps from quite a ways, perhaps 30 yards, and they were definitely bipedal, and bears do not walk like that for extended distance. At this moment, I believed there were humans trying to scare us or rob us, so I grabbed my revolver and out loud said, "Do not come any closer. I have a gun and will shoot." The breathing continued for perhaps 30 more seconds. By this time, all 4 of us were very awake, but then we could hear the steps, this time walking away. I immediately unzipped the tent door and looked in the direction of the steps, and with the full moon and no more than 15 yards, we saw this incredibly large, hairy animal, at least 8 feet tall, probably more. And using my hunting experience, I judged his weight at no less than 800 pounds. He heard our noise and turned around. We could see his human-like face. The moonlight illuminated him clearly. He let out a blood-curdling, hair-raising scream/growl that echoed throughout the mountains. We were all terrified. I knew that my revolver could not stop a beast that size before it reached us. But he turned away, walking very fast, and we never heard from it again. I know there's a lot of skepticism, but I have no doubt such species exist. There were 4 of us. We talk about that experience to this day, 30 years later. The then teenage boys are now grown men which pursue the hunting sport, including my son, and they all have had additional, less dramatic signs, noises, small rock throwing at the tent at night, etc. For many years we did not talk with anyone other than amongst ourselves, but nowadays there are many sightings. Please remember, we lived for more than a century with gorillas, and it was only relatively recent that we discovered them. I swear this is a true story.